You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
In a largely symbolic move, the Senate votes to block Biden's vaccine or test mandate. This is the mandate for employers that have over 100 employees. If you fell into that category, this vaccine mandate dictated that as an employer, you need to make sure all of your employees were vaxxed up. Now, that mandate has been put on hold. We pumped the brakes on that bad boy a little bit ago in the court system, but this is a move that the Senate just basically wants to send the message, and we'll get into it. It is symbolic, but it's important, and we're going to get into it. Before we do, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies here in the Seattle, Washington area, and I read the news. All right, let's go. So symbolism. Symbolism is important because you need as much effort in the direction that you want to head as possible. You want as many results in the right direction as possible. And we are seeing these vaccine mandates being blocked in the court system pretty consistently. And my whole thing, and a lot of everybody else is thinking as an employer, is that should the federal government be dictating that in order for people to earn a livelihood and put food on the table for their families, is that something that you make predicated upon getting a vaccine? A lot of folks say no, and the Senate just said no. So that's what we're doing. The Senate voted Wednesday night to overturn the Biden administration's proposed rule that large private employers, 100 employees and over, what if you have 98? What if you have 92? I mean, you guys are all good. Crazy, right? Arbitrary, totally arbitrary. 100. Proposed rules that large and private employers must require their workers to be vaccinated against COVID-19 or tested or face losing their jobs. The vote was 52-48 with two Democrats, Senators Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Jon Tester of Montana, fighting the good fight by joining all Republicans to overturn the regulation. Getting vaccinated should be a decision between an individual and his or her doctor, or just the individual. And I don't think anybody is saying, hey, don't get the vaccination. And you can say that in addition to, if you want to, but what folks are saying and what businesses are saying and what business leaders are saying and what the Senate is saying is, don't make it predicated upon being an employed individual in the United States to have that vaccine. Let that be the decision of the individual and or his or her doctor as they see fit. It shouldn't be up to any politician, especially in a mandate coming down from the highest authority, the president. I've been reading a lot, and that was Senator Mike Braun, a Republican from Indiana, who led the effort to overturn the requirement, he said during the Senate debate. There's been a lot of media coverage, slightly right of center, that's been kind of showing, all right, this vaccine mandate got put on hold, this one got put on hold. And I think the tide has kind of turned on that thing. At the beginning, when we were still battling horrific COVID-19 numbers, as the media would lead you to believe, that seemed like a good idea. And now these mandates, recent polls go up and polls go down. We found that out. And in the case of our current president, those polls, those are not good. And the vaccine mandate, the issue of that as far as the president's popularity at the moment, that is underwater. The United States public basically looks at that issue and says, we're not so sure that the handling of this is how we want this to be done. So the optics on these vaccine mandates at the moment, from what I'm reading, what I'm reporting to you, what I'm thinking, yeah, those are kind of we're gonna distance ourselves from that a little bit because that doesn't seem to be the right direction. We were all gung-ho there for a while. We were really gung-ho as a country. I mean, and by we, I mean not us, right? Okay, so because I honestly think this should be a decision that an individual makes. It's a medical decision. It's one's own body. And that's the road I go down. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't care. It's my opinion. That's just what I'm saying, and that's what I'm saying here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. The vote is largely symbolic. It seems unlikely that Democratic leaders in the House will take up the measure, and the White House has said President Biden will veto it if it reaches his desk. It's not going to reach his desk. We know that. The House isn't going to do jack with this, right? I mean, this is literally just, hey, we're going to run this up the flagpole. We know it's going to go nowhere, but this is what we're thinking. This is where we sit. This is like a communication salvo. Here we are, and the president. I mean, our current president doesn't exactly. He's not firing on all cylinders all the time, but he's not going to take something from the Senate, and if it miraculously got passed by the House, he's not going to take I'm going to veto. I'm not going to veto, something that I instigated as legislation. He's not going to do that. I mean, this is a no-go. So symbolism is important. But, we've had the court cases that we're seeing and some of the other. How about 𝑺𝒆𝒂𝒕𝒍𝒆? How about that conviction? You are guilty. Jesse, you are a liar and you are guilty. They let him off on one count, right? I thought that was interesting. Okay, so the 14th time that you lied to the police, they're going to let you off on that one. I mean, literally, did you see what the actual charges were? You are lying. You're a liar. You're a liar. You're a liar. Yeah, you did this. Did you see the noose around his neck? I paid more attention to that. He was in his own place, and the body cam from a police officer came in. I don't know. It just looked like nylon rope that you get at like the grocery store. The whole thing is fantastic as far as, all right, this is what we're going to present as a court case from the defense standpoint. And his family, bunch of liars as well. I mean, did you hear some of the stuff they're saying? Liars. It's so obvious. It's so clear what happened there. And to try and weasel out of that was really entertaining. And the media play on that was fantastically obvious from the standpoint of MSNBC. Basically, just silence, crickets. And I was looking through YouTube last night, looking to see who reported on it. And did CNN have anything to say on that? Not as of last night. They just didn't really, we're not really going to address this. So your major media, the right wing of the media is just putting on blast these videos of all of those media and celebrity figures that were like, oh, Jesse's been this is a real crime and we need to deal with this and hate crimes. And yeah, it turned out it was a hoax and he's a liar. And I hope he doesn't work in Hollywood again, but he probably will. He'll probably be put up on a pedestal, but because they'll still believe the lies and, whatever. So that to me was like, okay, court system's still working. At least they could figure that one out. Yeah. Kyle Rittenhouse, that was a good one, right? From the standpoint of, okay, those were self-defense cases. The court case, since we're talking about court cases here, the court case against 𝒔𝒕𝒍𝒆, I gotta be honest, I don't think we're going to get her out of office. It's by the time you watch this, there may be a recall vote, and that is due by December 17th. But I think she's going to squeak it through and not be recalled. So 𝒔𝒕𝒍𝒆, the highest politician in the United States that's affiliated with a socialist group, the Socialist Alternative, she will probably survive her election recall, which was really disappointing. But out of 40,000 votes right now, as I'm reporting this, it comes down to a difference of 232 votes. And at the beginning, the recall was ahead by 53%. It was ahead by a handful of percentage points. But what happens in a lot of these super liberal districts is that the voters vote really, really late, meaning they will mail in their vote that day. And so the election results will probably go in Sawant's favor. And I think that's what's happening. And so unless there's some kind of recall and they retabulate the votes again, I think Kshama Sawant is going to survive the election recall. So there's that. You can't win them all, right? But like 5 out of 6 cases, that's not bad. That's a good winning percentage. In baseball, phenomenal. Republicans, we're back to talking about this symbolic measure here in the Senate. Republicans used a law called the Congressional Review Act, which allows Congress to overturn federal regulations and requires just a simple majority vote in both the Senate and the House, which they got because they got 2 Democrats to go vote their side. Before the vote, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and by the way, before we go into him, and by the way, I mean, let's just be honest. Joe Manchin, he should just be a Republican. I mean, he's always in that camp. Why doesn't he just take the knee and go to that side, right? I mean, I'm kind of joking, but it's like, Joe, you're a Democrat and you're consistently voting along these lines. Come to the good side. Come to the good side. So Republicans used a law called the Congressional Review Act, which allows Congress to overturn federal regulations and requires just a simple majority vote in both the Senate and the House.不the vote, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer from New York said he was strongly opposed to the measure and attacked supporters of ending the requirement as anti-vaxxers. All right. Although several specifically made the point that they believed in vaccines, but not mandates. And that's where I kind of sit. I've been vaccinated. I got the vaccine. Didn't really want to, but just, they make it so that you can't really operate as a human being, especially in a city like Seattle, without having that. Plus, I've got some parents that I felt an obligation to do that. They didn't ask me. We never talked about it. I don't think they even know. Mom and Dad, I am vaxxed. If you care, I just spent a week with you on Thanksgiving. It was a moot point. But I felt just a responsibility on my end to do that, because then I am also out in public, and sometimes people tag me on social media, and to be out in public and be in places where you're supposed to have a vax and not good optics, let's say. And you might say that's an excuse. All right, that's my excuse. That's my rationalization. Plus, I've got a lot of people around me that have been required to get basically vaccinated, and the whole thing. But the deal for me is, don't make somebody's ability to earn a living dependent upon it. That's a hard no-go to me. Some of the anti-vaxxers here in this chamber remind me of what happened 400 years ago when people were clinging to the fact that the sun revolved around the earth, he said. They just didn't believe science. Or 500 years ago when they were sure the earth was flat. All right, this is NPR, National Propaganda Radio. So you've got a couple of scenarios going on here, neither of which are really connected in a true fashion, because I think the fact that the earth is flat versus, being dictated you have to have a vaccine through a mandate in order to work and, feed your family. There's a little disconnect there, but we're just gonna say that, all right, you're entitled to your opinion. But the rest of us don't really see it that way. Braun, who said he was pro-vaccine and is vaccinated, called the Biden administration's requirement the heavy hand of government and overreach. He said his phone had been ringing off the hook with calls from constituents opposed to the mandate. So that's where this comes in. Hey, this thing we set this up in the Senate here, to their constituents. They're going to be able to say, this is what we did. It didn't go anywhere in the House. And the president was probably going to veto it because he's not going to be on board with something like this since he created this mandate. This is his mandate. He's dictating this mandate. So here we are. And this is one of those things where, yep, people are going to point at it and go, well, that was an enormous waste of time. Kind of like, not a waste of time, but from the standpoint of actually getting this through. Kind of like the amount of hours the Chicago Police Department had to put in on the 𝑺𝒆𝒂𝒕𝒕𝒍𝒆 case. Absolutely. I mean, is he going to pay for that? I think he should. That guy's only going to get, he's going to get a slap on the wrist. He's going to get some kind of probation, and it doesn't make up for all the resources that went into that ridiculous case that I think a third grader could probably see through and go, that dude's guilty, and his family's a bunch of liars. That's the way I see it from everything I saw. And the celebrities and newscasters that jumped all on board on that story, yeah, you should all do an apology. Yeah, you know what? Some more information came to light, and I now believe that Jussie Smollett is not a victim of a racial hate crime, but he paid to have that done to, promote his career. That's what he did, and I see now that he's a liar. Those are the statements they should all be issuing. But instead, they're like, oh, yeah, we've got some more stuff on the January 6th deal, and we're just going to focus on that. Jussie Smollett, who's that? Oh, yeah, I remember him. Yeah. Huh. Wild, right? A September Gallup poll showed a majority of Americans support private companies requiring their workers to get vaccinated. Okay, I wonder what that poll would look like now in December. When broken out by party, an overwhelming majority of Democrats, 94%, favor such mandates. Only 19% of Republicans do. I wonder if this was President Trump mandating these vaccine requirements. I wonder what that would look like. I mean, interesting, right? Would the Democrats still say, you still got to get it? Because initially, at the outset, the current administration was like, no, we're not doing any vaccine mandates. No, we're not doing that, until they did, right? So 94% favor such mandates. Only 19% of Republicans do. Another Gallup poll from September showed that 56% of Republicans surveyed were fully or partially vaccinated, and 92% of Democrats were. So it's become a real political, we're politicizing all of this stuff. It's we're divided. It's crazy. So red state governors and other Republicans have made opposition to vaccine mandates a political issue. Yes, but they basically believe that, that's an individual decision. So bringing that up, does that make it a political issue? In one way or another, but it's not like we're using this exclusively for political ruse, right? And various requirements have led to a slew of court cases because there's another side to this, which is being mandated to have a vaccine is a no-go in a lot of people's book. Last month, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit in New Orleans had ordered the administration to halt the mandate that employers with 100 or more employees require vaccinations or frequent testing, saying it raises serious constitutional concerns. How about we talk about Bill de Blasio's vaccine mandate for every employee in the state of New York? New York City. He's the mayor of New York City. How about that? And he's out of the office, January 1st? So he puts in a vaccine mandate, gives businesses 3 weeks to put it in place for all their folks. I mean, you can't even get fully vaccinated in that time period, right? If you're an individual who wants to keep their job. Is that even possible? Well, I mean, you can with the Johnson & Johnson, I guess, but other folks who want to choose maybe people need to be able to make their own choices, right? And you're just having this stuff slammed down your throat. And a lot of folks are, I think, at that point where they're like, I'm a no-go. Or even just this general idea of having mandates in place at all. That's having less and less of a positive impact from my standpoint, from all the news that I read and perspectives that I'm seeing. Another thing is the coronavirus. We're talking about that less and less. It's having less and less of an impact a lot of the requirements, a lot of the restrictions are going away, except in cities like Seattle, where it's, we're just all gung-ho. Yeah, this is what we want to do. But then we got a lot of other stuff going on in Seattle that's pretty whacked out as well. So, you got to kind of judge all that and go, is that something we want to be involved with? I don't think so. And on Tuesday, a district court judge in Georgia blocked the administration from requiring that all federal contractors be vaccinated. So the first one we just talked about, the Fifth Circuit Court, that's employers with 100 or more. That got put on hold. And just a couple of days ago, district court in Georgia blocked the administration from requiring federal contractors be vaccinated by January 4th. That's on hold. An earlier court ruling blocked the administration from requiring that healthcare workers be vaccinated. So these vaccine mandates, they are meeting heavy opposition in the court system. Some might even say that they're not constitutional. Weird. Right? And then the court systems are blocking them? Shocking. Weird. White House Press Secretary 𝒔𝒕𝒕𝒍𝒆 said the administration will vigorously defend the vaccine or testing mandate against legal challenges, which are expected to end up before the Supreme Court. Yeah. I don't know how many more podcasts I'm going to do on COVID. You know what I mean? I think the best offense right now is to basically just focus on other stuff. I really do. Because so much of this is, it's out there in the court system. Somebody's handling it. And I totally get that if you are an employee or if you're a federal contractor and this is coming down on you, yep. And that's why I'm doing this podcast. But I think in broad strokes, you basically ignore this stuff and you start living your life. I think everybody does. This is just something that we got to deal with. All right. So you had the choice to get a vaccine or you didn't. So you got it and you ended up in the hospital. All right. So then you deal with it. We're adults here. We can make our own decisions. So that's kind of where we're at. That's where I think we're at. That's where I think we should be at, is live your life, move on. And we've got some catching up to do. We've got the economy. We got a effing snowstorm here in Washington State, and we don't have enough drivers of the snow plows at the passes to keep the passes open. I mean, what's going on there? We had a 911 alert call message go out. You get those alerts, and it was from the 911 center here in Seattle, and they were indicating, if you have a 911 problem, you need to call these other two numbers. Don't call 911. And various stories are coming up about what that is, but we know they're short-staffed in the 911. We got a lot of catching up to do. There's a lot of industries that need workers. We need to get people back, kind of back on the grind, doing our thing, becoming, economically viable again after these shutdowns. And you're open, you're closed, you're essential, you're not, all that craziness that we're trying to work our way out of. And go down that road. So we've got the White House saying, we're going to vigorously defend. All right. Well, you vigorously defend those vaccine mandates, and the rest of us will kind of plow forward as we do while you keep talking and, going over stuff that the rest of us may or may not care about. So that's where we sit. All right. So yet another vaccine mandate ruling from the Senate that they've basically just said, we're not on board with that one. It just sends the message out there. Okay, here's where we sit. And I think a lot of folks are on board with that, that are even maybe right in the middle of this issue right now. I think folks they're at that point where they're like, we've kind of been through all of this. Time to get a move on, people. It's time to focus on whatever is next, not what we've been through, not where we were. How many people have already been vaccinated? So many of these cities I look at, like, that's a really high percentage. How much more blood can you squeeze from the rock? They're still trying. So we're going to defend that as long as need be. And why are we talking about this on a real estate podcast? Well, because employment is one of those critical factors in housing. You got to have the JOB, not the JAB. You got to have the JOB to buy a house. It's called employment, unless you're paying cash. And if you're paying cash, you're good to go. But the rest of us, you got to have a job, make that mortgage payment. And if you are, an employee at a company with 100 people and over, you're going to be mandated to get it. And all those other folks I talked about, the other vaccine mandates that have been put on hold, those are people with employment scenarios that housing depends on one way or the other. So that's why we talk about these issues, because this is an employment scenario, and employment is an enormous part of the whole real estate deal. So I like to talk about those issues because those are the getting in the weeds issues as far as what's happening with the broader economy. And we know we've got a hot housing market. We've got the lowest supply ever, historically low supply. And you've been hearing me babble on about that forever. But you got other stuff going on as well. That's what we talk about here. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for supporting the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. I'd love to have you subscribe, hit that like button, maybe make a comment, whatever it is. Lets the algorithm know, hey, the Seattle Real Estate Podcast, it might be viable. That guy talking, he's not, but maybe the podcast is. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Thanks again for being here. We'll catch up soon. Until then, stay safe. We'll talk again. Bye for now.